Hello and welcome back, and that is right, today we are returning to the subject of setting up your Asustor NAS right the very first time, and today we're going to look at multimedia. That's right, whether it is you're buying a Nimbus store, a Locker store, a Flash store, seriously, cool job on the naming by the way. When it comes to these systems, a lot of you are going to buy them specifically to enjoy the multimedia, the years, decades even, of music, videos, photos that you have owned and accumulated, and the Asustor platform does provide a number of different ways to enjoy different types of media. But before we go through each of them and show you how to set them up, a few disclaimers straight off the bat. There's some things that are not going to be included in this video for the reasons I'm going to detail. Number one, in the App Center there, a number of you are already going to be wondering, what about Plex? Plex Media Server, arguably one of the best multimedia applications for media servers in the market. The same goes with Emby, the same goes with Jellyfin. None of those will be featured in this video. The reason being, they are big enough videos on their own. I've already done setup guides, and I'm going to be doing a separate video for Plex, and maybe even combine Jellyfish, Emby and Plex all into one video as well. But I didn't want to include them because I wanted to focus on first-party tools. And with that, that brings me to my second point. When it comes to first-party tools, it's worth highlighting that when it comes to multimedia, the Asustor platform has bloody loads of applications. However, a lot of them are not first party. So whether it is that you want to bridge the gap with existing third-party streaming services via the Portal app, more on that in a moment, such as your Amazon Prime, Netflix and stuff like that, or you're looking to still use third-party media servers, I'm not going to be including anything really that is not first party there, but I do recommend you go through some of these apps and services. There is varying levels of support and updates on them. So for example, if we go down to something like Twonky's last update we can see down there was March 2023, but other ones, probably smaller known platforms or people that have remodded old applications and carried them over, there's a level to how well they've been updated, and if you go down into status and time, you can find out which apps have seen the most frequent and more recent updates to the ones that haven't there. But I'm not going to be including any third-party tools unless it's strictly necessary there. Talking of first-party tools though, another thing I'm not going to be covering in this video, what a way to start a video, is Asustor Portal. Something that I'm probably going to do a dedicated video on. This is their HDMI output application there. What do I mean by that? This is well, a lot of Asustor NASs that arrived with an x86 processor from AMD. In some cases, I'm not sure they've gone with AMD on their platforms, but definitely Intel, your Celerons, your Pentiums, your Intel cores. And of course going into the M100 and 300 and N95 and all the new CPUs that no doubt you're going to start seeing on Asustor NASs in years to come. These NASs all arrive with an HDMI output. That HDMI output allows you to have a completely parallel user interface to enjoy your multimedia. This parallel user interface doesn't just clone the one that you're seeing here on my web browser. It's completely separate. It is a completely different user interface where all the applications that run on it are dedicated for use as an HDMI output app. To put that into perspective, if we go back into the search function, hopefully if I look at Asustor apps there and we put the word Portal in, you'll see applications that support Portal. These are the apps that can run via the HDMI output. You install them via the user interface here on the web browser. I believe you even can do it via the Portal HDMI output and install those apps and run them directly from the comfort of your sofa on a big TV or at your desktop and monitor there. And again, there is support of those streaming platforms too, as well as utilizing virtual machine utilization with VirtualBox and Linux Center there. I'm not going to be including it because that's a completely separate video, and installing it is the same as installing any other app, and installing other features and services is the same. There's just not a lot of first-party apps in order for you to utilize there, and some of them, as you see with Amazon Prime there, are kind of duplicates. So I'm not going to include Asustor Portal, but I'll probably make a completely dedicated video to that for 2024 coming up soon. But that's enough about talking about what this video isn't. You came to know what it is. First thing I want to talk about when setting up your Asustor NAS for multimedia straight away is one of the best things about running media on an Asustor NAS. Go into the settings menu and straight away there in the middle, media mode right there. Media mode, this is something no other brand offers. They bring similar things. Some other NAS brands allow you to add add-ons or optimizations or driver updates to certain specific components within their own structure of hardware. And indeed, when you do look at Asustor, they do have an add-on for adding drivers as well to your system if you want, for AMD kernel extensions, a lot of that into the user interface, I should add. But what media mode does is ultimately restart the system, but allows optimization and utilization of Intel QuickSync, which for things like transcoding and playing back more modern media types and formats is incredibly beneficial. Now, by default, this option is off. So make a point, if you're going to utilize your Asustor NAS for multimedia, to head into the settings menu, go to media mode and enable it. But bear in mind, by doing so, the system will need to restart to establish that. But when it does, it means the system has a better access to that hardware, particularly for CPUs. And I say in particular, specifically for CPUs that have integrated graphics there, particularly the Intel series there. Of course, there is a chance that you're using a CPU that doesn't feature Intel QuickSync support. Not all Intel CPUs actually support it. So if you don't have that, it may not even be available there. So what about if you want to enjoy photos, music and video in the most casual, easy way possible? I'm of course talking about DLNA and UPnP, Digital Living Network Alliance and Universal Plug and Play. These are the systems that are kind of base level security, but also base level access that allow you to enjoy multimedia from your NAS on mobile phones, on tablets, on smart TVs, pretty much any device on the local area network. And although you can reconfigure UPnP in some cases and your network protocol to allow external access, it's not really advised, as it really does not have the most robust security credentials available. And once you start configuring with your port forwarding and opening up, little gaps in firewalls, that is a slippery slope, my friends. So if you do want to enjoy media on a local area network and you don't want to install any proprietary apps, or maybe you're using a device that doesn't allow you to install proprietary apps to enjoy your media, then definitely go into the App Center. And although there are multiple DLNA and UPnP applications available, the one you want to go for is UPnP Media Server version 2. That is Asustor's own application. Again, I've talked about it in other videos before using Mini DLNA. That is a third-party app there hosted by Asustor, and go ahead and install UPnP Media Server v2. It has seen an update. Then, once it's installed, open up that application, and as you can see here, the initial screen that we're seeing here shows us not only the system we've got here, but also we can scan whenever we're ready. Now, it will scan on restart, by the way. It will do that as you go. But if you go into media sources there, once you've uploaded data to your Asustor NAS, which if you didn't follow the previous series in this, previous videos in this series, just go ahead, go into the File Explorer. You've got multiple options. You can go ahead and directly upload into the file or directory that you are currently in. Alternatively, you can just go ahead, if you wish, and drag and drop files directly in to whatever folder you're looking into there, or if you've already mounted the system as a mapped drive. And again, check out the other videos prior to this one to show you how to map a network drive or use Easy Connect and Easy Sync to establish a connection between your host system there. But if we choose there, we'll go for those Asustor files there. You can quite simply drag and drop them directly in if you choose to there. Again, skip, overwrite, whatever. Once you've added the multimedia to this system, whatever way you see fit, go back into Universal Plug and Play version 2. And from here, click Add, give the folder a name. So in this case, I'm going to be calling this one Media 2. Select Browse. Find the directory that you have placed your media in. So in my case, I've got a media folder here and then a multimedia folder there, and it's got a breakdown of all my media. That's what I've done. But as you install applications for photos and music and video, more on that later on, it will create sub folders there. So if we select the video folder and just select OK, then click OK, as you can see, it's now added the media folder. And when you're ready, and if you've just added that and there is data in that folder, click Scan Now, and that means that now on the local area network, with no need for an admin login, no kind of low-level username login required there, by default, you can go ahead and ensure the NAS is picked up by your other multimedia devices, because the NAS will only be working there on the network. Now in the Advanced tab, if we flick in, we've got a couple of other options. The first one, again, you can use it by default if you have multiple Ethernet ports attached to your device. At the moment, I'm using a 10 GBE equipped Asustor FlashStore 12 Pro. If you are using one that's got multiple LAN ports and you know your traffic on your local area network is going to be busy, I do recommend bonding your media server to a physical LAN port. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say you've got 5 family members that are backing up to the NAS all the time. They're doing other stuff with it, but they are backing up periodically. On top of that, the NAS may be backing up to another NAS, as seen in part 3 of this video series. Now, in this scenario, the minute you're trying to stream multimedia, one of two things will happen. Obviously, this requires denser media, but media being streamed on the local area network may be quite clunky, and either is going to oversaturate the network in the case of 4K native, or there won't be available network space for when all the other operations are happening. And unlike backups, which can be incremental, which can be, done little by little on individual files, multimedia is traditionally a sequential large file being handed over, and therefore breakages, slowdown, or any kind of friction is noticeable. So if you've got a router or switch that's got more than one physical port on the rear, as this one does here, I do recommend connecting more than one cable between the NAS and the router, or the router and the NAS and the switch, to allow one port to be bonded to multimedia on its own, so everyone can enjoy it with a full 1 gigabit, 2.5 gigabit, or even a 10 gigabit network shared, and the other one can be utilized for backups and more. Apart from that, if you have media server supporting devices in the local area network that you want to work with, you can assign them and remove them if you choose. So if you want to make sure that some devices on the local area network that have an identity do not have access for one reason or another, maybe your kid's grounded and you don't want them to watch a box set, that is an option that's open to you there. And the same goes for transcoding. If you want to be able to allow the system to not try to reshape a file, and that's using the system resources, or even allow the destination device to commit transcoding, you can actually disable that option if you choose to, and thereby saving system resources when they could be used for something else, probably more productive and ultimately more useful on a system later on. So let's talk about music. You want to enjoy the music on your Asustor NAS. I don't know if you've noticed, but a number of the more recent releases from Asustor, particularly the FlashStore, have actually started arriving with SPDIF audio output for those that really take their audio seriously and want to have local direct access at high fidelity audio media, or at least conjoined with their existing video media to really get the most out of it. But if you're reliant on network connectivity, having that audio coming through as clear as a whistle, and either in the original high dense format like an FLAC file, a FLAC file, or an MP4A, in that case you're either going to want to ensure that that file is being transmitted in its original form natively for the higher end audio device to receive, or you're going to make sure that the system resources are able to convert that file as effectively and fluidly as possible so the destination device can still take advantage of it. Now, Asustor provide an application known as SoundsGood. I talked about this in previous videos, but it is worth highlighting again. There are a lot of applications available for iOS and Android for you to enjoy across all of these NAS brands, and Asustor is no different. They have the Android apps there. The support on the iOS platform is debatable, I would say. Looking at this list here, again, this isn't all encompassing, but I will say as an Android user, I've used numerous of their apps, and I will be revisiting a lot of these apps in some videos coming up soon. But when it comes to audio, you can use AI Music, and the AI Music application allows you to synchronize with the SoundsGood app, which you can manage and dictate between here on the web browser. And there's even an Asustor portal application that allows you to run that audio server in a visual database and actually cross it with other visual effects as well. Now, again, this app completely free, easy to install, and alongside that, as mentioned, there are a lot of other audio applications on the Asustor platform that you can take advantage of and look into, as well as binding things like your Spotify with Asustor Portal. So from the comfort of your sofa with the visual output from your Asustor NAS into your TV, you can install pretty much all of the apps that you would install on a Roku, on a Fire TV or whatever, but on that NAS. Thereby, they're all coming through the Asustor system. There's even elements of screen recording and third-party applications, and even digital TV tuners that you can introduce into the system as well. But returning to the subject of SoundsGood, it installs easy. Going into the settings menu allows you to start some of that indexing and some of the directories that you're going to be utilizing there. Depending on the complexity of the audio you're using, you can again modify a lot of that transcoding there to reshape the files. Again, that is going to be very dependent on the client systems, the client multimedia devices you're going to be streaming to. Next up, media sources. Unsurprisingly, this is where we add where our music is going to be obtained from. We've been through this already. Permissions. In one of our previous parts, we mentioned that when you are setting up the device, when it comes to enjoying low-level services, it is always recommended to go into the user account section, create a new user just for multimedia. If you're going to be having this one account on a multitude of different devices to stream to, don't give that system a powerful account that if that system becomes compromised, they can get to all of your data. Create an account using the account addition system here to create a new user with a lower level of security credentials, but can still have read-only access to that media. That's one of the reasons why people like using DLNA/UPnP media server support, because it really does only provide read-only services there. And again, making sure that individual users that you want to grant access to this app have the relevant level of access. By default as well, unlike a lot of other brands, Asustor does enable lyric wiki by default, which means, again, if you're going to want the lyrics there on screen, not really karaoke style, but at least they're there, you can crawl them immediately and they'll get found online. And that's really it for that service. There isn't a huge number of configuration options built into this here. Again, a lot of it is built into the idea of this being accessed externally. Very few users will actually use the desktop user interface via a web browser to listen to that music. They're going to be utilizing it on destination client devices with its own GUI or the mobile application we've described. But let's say, for example, we select this file here. We'll make sure that's turned off because YouTube. If we go ahead and play this audio file down here, we've got the usual controls here at the bottom. I don't know why I picked this song for lyrics, because let's be realistic. This song, if you know it as well as I do, it has 0 lyrics there. But configuration options are largely the same here as they are on the mobile. It's easy to configure, create your playlist. It's all there on the left-hand side of the screen. You know what you're doing. It's a fairly straightforward. If you ever use Winamp, welcome to the world. And again, it's all straightforward. Let's move over to photos. Now, I've mentioned this in other videos, and I'm not sure how much longer this is going to be true for, but it is worth highlighting that Asustor currently, at the time of recording, does not have an AI-powered photo recognition application built in there. I think this is going to change, but at least for now, if you want to enjoy photography on your NAS, unsurprisingly, when we look at the applications and services, just like before, although there is lots of third-party applications, we're of course looking at the main first-party one, Photo Gallery 3. Again, easy installation, and you can go ahead and select the directories you want to use. Thumbnail generation will of course be dependent on the power of the system you are using, along with metadata scraping as well. So for example, if you want to look at an original picture, have a little look, find out more information about it, the metadata is crawled, it is taken away, and you can find out more information about it on the right-hand side of the screen. But of course, that is metadata that is going to have to have been stored by the device taking the photo. In this case, this would be a mobile phone, which stores a lot of info in that metadata there with regards to the camera, the aperture, the ISO, even geolocational data as well. And if you choose to sharing the files, you can share with password protection, and of course a time restriction on it if you choose at the top right of the screen. If we go ahead and disable my camera, because that's been really unhelpful. So on the top right of the screen, you'll see those configuration options up there. Again, if you choose to, you can do a slideshow to go through all the individual files, download a local copy if you choose, rotate the file, again, create a little sub-mini playlist or an album, and of course that sharing link there, as mentioned, allows you to share with other users, password, when it's going to run out, that sort of thing. It's all fairly straightforward. And the admin section there, going into settings, When it comes to the viewing quality, this is something you're going to have to stay on top of. Thumbnail generation, even in 2024, and I doubt it's going to change in 2025 or 6, thumbnail generation is a real burden when it comes to streaming media remotely. We take for granted that files, when you are accessing them remotely on a NAS or the cloud, that seeing the file's thumbnail, that's nothing, right? We understand when we open the file, there might be a millisecond, a fraction of a second delay, but thumbnails, right, that'll be fine. But once you break into albums, and particularly photo albums that span the decades, that will have photos that go on into the hundreds, if not thousands of albums, the result is those tiny thumbnails all add up. And streaming that stuff remotely, thumbnails end up being a case of thumbnail generation either is done wholesale and stored somewhere on the system, again, that will add up, or on an ad hoc basis. So to put that into perspective, here's a big pile of photos, but look what happens if I start trying to outpace the photos restoration and pulling those thumbnails. It will have to pull those. Now, this takes a lot of background efficiency and work by the system there, and that is something worth bearing in mind when it comes to photo generation on your system, and exactly why there is a question of what viewing quality you want by default. Again, as mentioned in the download section, they do have their own photo application, and there seems to be discussion about AI photo recognition coming in soon, and that will include facial recognition and object recognition. Now, the validity of that and when it's going to arrive is up for debate, but at least it sounds like that's something they're moving towards. Now, when it comes to sources, unsurprisingly, exact the same as before, just state where the photos are, and then you can select them in there. Just make sure they're in a shared folder, otherwise you can't access them. With the slideshows, you can upload music. Doesn't seem like you can use existing music on the system, sadly, but if you want to have custom slideshows, that is an option. And of course, if thumbnails are missing, if there are issues, you can generate them on the fly to fill in the blanks, and the system will go ahead and wholesale get those thumbnails together. But just remember, when you're browsing, you're not generating these on the fly, but they're being pulled from a database, and it has to do a lot of them. So the quicker we move, the more we bring in, the density of that thumbnail generation grows extraordinarily high. But when it comes to albums, again, you can create albums relatively quickly. They will create them based on sub-details as well. So, for example, some information like geolocational data is being pulled. So a lot of that is locked into that geodata. Again, as we saw from a lot of the background when we're looking at the information of these photos, we're able to get that much, at least on the basis of where the photos are being taken. However, things like facial recognition, things like object recognition, because they're not rolled in yet, it means that a lot of the classification systems are just not there. There is a duplicate system, and again, if you do have duplicates, which I clearly have because I've been using these albums for a long time, this is a really nice option. And also on the top right, you can just select the duplicates and boom, I'm about to delete 1,331 photos and save a whole lot of room. So at least that's something we can do within that photo system. And particularly if you're uploading genuine decades of photos, you're going to have dupes in there. And it doesn't just go by the file name, it looks at the file size, the file resolution, a lot of that metadata being scraped as well, all adds up. The fact that we have a folder level access is nice. So if you don't want to go through the micromanagement of selecting individual album folders, go into the folders tab at the top, and from there you're able to select those individual folders from the mainline selection. Just make sure that the account you have assigned for this, whether it is you're going to create that dedicated multimedia account or not, has access to these shared folders, because the rules you create in ADM at the OS level, they are reflective of every application assigned and used by that user account and that group as well. But creating, new folders is possible, but it's not the easiest. So for example, if we randomly select some other photos here, some GIFs as well, some live photos, from there on the top right, we can see there are new options available to us. Again, we've got the usual Windows stuff there, but what's quite nice is the ability for us to now create that new album for us. We create the new album, from there, click add, and boom, we now have the new album. Go in, and there is our test folder there at the bottom. And just before we move on, there's going to be some of you wondering about, what about if you've got existing photos on your proprietary cloud storage space that comes with your device, like this Android device. Well, I can only really speak for Android, at least as far as this video goes. There are alternatives to this on the Apple and iOS platform, but if you are an Android user, strongly recommend you head over to something called Google Takeout. Completely free to access. Just log in with your Google account, and from there you can go down, find Google Photos here, and then from Google Photos what you can do is download your entire collection of photos from Google. Now bear in mind, it's going to take up some serious space, and unfortunately you can't just point it at the Asustor NAS. Some platforms like UPnP have produced apps and services that allow you to bridge these. Unfortunately, that isn't an option you can do right now. Also bear in mind with Google Takeout, when you do download your entire collection of photos from Google, bear in mind that does not include the metadata. They strip the metadata separately. I don't know why, and it will produce a bunch of files called JSON files. You can use certain online services to connect those back together. But it means that if you don't connect those files, when you do start going through the files here on the system, the result is that some of these images will not have that metadata, which means smart album creation won't be supported. You may even get lower resolution alternatives to these files where, as you can see here, you don't get any of the metadata and it's a lower resolution version overall. And again, download, do what you want. It's all nice and straightforward. And really, photo management on here, arguably if you do use something like Emby or Plex, you're going to have a smoother experience, and some of those actually integrate some low-level AI software services as well. But apart from that, that's really all of the configuration options that you're going to have for photography, and we've walked through them. Which brings us to video, and the LooksGood application of the 3 media apps we've talked about thus far is probably the one I like the most. And again, as always, there is a mobile application if you need it to enjoy on your system. But alongside that, if you look at the myriad of other apps, some of which we'll talk about later on, there is integration with this app into the Asustor portal. So again, comfort of your sofa, whether it is you're going to be using an infrared remote control, infrared remote control with a receiver, I should say, with USB, a Bluetooth one, or even using Asustor's remote control application that you can install on a mobile device. Super helpful, that one on the bottom right. But when you look at the range of options here, so straight away you can already see that here on screen I've got the thumbnail information, and if I go into one of these files, let's go into the matrix there, I've got the description, I know the actors, it's all listed there at the bottom. Why is that? Well, that's because in the settings menu I've already assigned metadata crawling there. You don't have to do any kind of sign up with the International Movie Database there, or the TV database. All you need to do for the files there, so if we go ahead and create a brand new one, we're going to a new library there, click plus, select it as a movies file, give it a name, we'll call it films because Britain, and then from there we can go ahead, select it's going to be in English, next click folder, select the folder that we're going to be adding. So for example, and again I've already created a movies folder, so I'm just going to select video for now, select permissions, say who can use it, and that's really it. It's that straightforward. Click next, click OK, and boom, you've created yourself your brand new album. But with those default libraries there, and a lot of the configuration options with the media conversion, there's actually a little bit more depth to what you can do within the LooksGood application there. So for example, you can choose with regards to smart converting how much resources are used ad hoc and on the fly based on the available resources to them. That will mean that rather than wholesale using up everything, it can actually, incrementalize a lot of the conversion of those files. The same goes with conversion files, where you can actually change files in advance and sort of build up files to be done later on, but do be aware that that can lead to duplication. And that media conversion, when you go to the tab here on the left hand side, actually allows you to add piles of files in advance if you choose. So for example, I'd go into my media folder here, break in, and say for example, I look at my 8K test files, click next, say what I want to convert them into. So say I wanted to convert all my 8K into 1080p, click OK, and then boom, it will add that job ready to go for us to go ahead and start converting those files. Smart folder is when you're going to have those intelligent outputs, and that's really it. It will now start trying to convert those files and filtering through different kind of subcategories. At least for the web browser, it's pretty straightforward. There on the left hand side we have the movies, we have TV shows, we have home movies as well. Just how we've ever assigned them from our own makeup, and all other folders you create, the new libraries, are added here on a different tab. Now I think a part of that is because of that scraping of metadata being semi-automated there. So for example, if we go into another file here, we're able to see that not only is the metadata in the TV movie database data been pulled, but a lot of that has been semi-automated, which means that unlike a lot of other NAS brands where you can create multiple categories of movie or TV show scraped metadata, this kind of bottles them into those little forms there, simplifying the process significantly, but also being a great deal more efficient about it. Now, if we look at playback of a file, such as this rather dense 4K file here, we can go ahead and play that there, and it will play it in the web browser, and immediately will inquire as to what format you want to go for. So I'm going to go for straight away into that resolution there, and then from there it will play in the web browser. Now, if you're using a mobile device, it will borrow and lean upon your existing video player as well, and the options may seem a little bit limited, arguably, here in the web browser, but I think the majority of users are not going to be watching that media that comes from the NAS on their web browser there. They're going to be utilizing third-party streaming devices and all of that. Again, configuration and customization of the resolution is available to you, and right now this is a file that is currently being transcoded there, so at least the system's got that oomph behind it to get the job done. But when you're using those third-party devices, there is an option down here that allows you to control the media player that it's connecting with. Compatibility is, of course, a question mark there. And finally, you can, of course, just browse the files and folders on your NAS as you see fit here, whereupon, rather than just going for the preset directories, you can play them in the web browser. But again, depending on the configuration you're using, if you're using, for example, a Roku or a Fire TV, there isn't any Asustor apps for those platforms, as I understand it. And in that world, you would probably need to use something like MX Player, VLC, or even My Media, if you're going to use some of the Amazon stuff as well, to access and stream the media from your Asustor NAS on there using that third-party app on those client devices. Again, Asustor is a smaller company than some of the other ones out there, and although there are apps and services you can use, and definitely, as mentioned, if you use some of the third-party ones like Emby and Plex, you're going to have a very different experience indeed, but that's really the extent to which you can get things done with the first-party apps on the Asustor platform for multimedia. But there you go, that is how to set up your Asustor NAS for multimedia. As mentioned, we will be doing that dedicated Plex video. We may even roll in Plex, Emby, maybe even Jellyfin all into one single video to show you how to install them and set those up, but we'll cover that perhaps in a future video. Remember, if you need further support on this, we've already done 3 other parts in this video series and probably going to be doing 3 or 4 others covering other kinds of multimedia third-party app. We're also going to be looking at more specialized storage applications, hot spares, auto rebuilds, that sort of thing, and going into that iSCSI LUN information and snapshots and stuff like that, and a more dedicated video for storage, a more specialized one. And of course, we're also going to be dipping into surveillance and a surveillance center application for Asustor. In the meantime, if you need further support, NAS Compares, baby, on the right hand side, free advice section, and of course the NAS Builder if needed. NAS Builder will help you choose the right solution for your needs out the gate, and the free advice section, not only do we recommend lots of third party and even first party community support servers and our own Discord, there's also subreddits that we do recommend for different NAS users. And if you are okay to wait 3 to 5 working days, the free support section manned by me and Eddie, or an expedited support section within 24 hours working days. Apart from that, you can head over to our Ko-Fi or Patreon, where not only can you get that expedited support, also join our membership tier for early access to these videos, suggested content, monthly Zooms, and exclusive content. Or you can go to services and arrange a 1-hour Zoom consultation with myself or Eddie if needed. And of course, the community Zoom as well, community support forum too. But that's about it. I will see you next time.